Hello and welcome to SME TV. I'm your host, Angela Vithulkas, bringing you the latest in news and views for the SME community. Today's word is ESOP. Maybe you've heard of it? No? Well, it's all about value, reward, motivation, investment and succession. It could be the best thing to ever happen to an SME. Employee share ownership plans. Keep watching to find out more. Please remember, by subscribing to our YouTube channel, you're showing your support not just for us, but for all SMEs. And we encourage you to comment and share SME TV. Our guest today is the ESOP man himself, Craig West, CEO and founder of Succession Plus. Welcome, Craig.
Thanks for having me, Angela.
Do you like that? I'm going to get your little name badge, ESOP man.
ESOP man. It's cool.
Well, you are. You are. And I don't want to jump ahead and say that, do I have to call you Dr. West?
No, you don't.
Right. So,
Definitely not.
But soon, maybe. Right.
Next year, maybe.
So employee share ownership plans, it's big.
It's becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. We've seen a massive uplift in inquiry due to COVID, I believe, and during COVID. So it's been really interesting to see.
And look, I'm new to the whole world of ESOP. I've heard of it, but more from an American connotation. Which is a little bit different here. But if we pull it apart and we'll start with, what are they, who can use them, why would we use them, why are they popular, those are basic things. But on the surface, it's the perfect succession plan.
It can be. If it's designed properly, it can be. And we do a lot of work in this space because of that exact scenario. It's a really interesting balance between all of the things people try and put together to make a successful succession plan.
Well, what we've got is we've normally had succession plans for family businesses, and everyone's been spending decades trying to plan how the family might take it over and what's the circumstances, and what if the second generation isn't as smart as the first generation, or the third generation doesn't want it, loved all the financial gain but doesn't want to actually do any work for it. So those have been challenges, right?
Absolutely.
So this is a way for someone who's worked really hard to build up something in their business and have those people that are working in the business with them create that succession strategy plan, an exit for the owner, a way in for the employees, and it's a win-win.
If it's designed properly, it should be a win-win,
okay.
Absolutely.
So let's start with it, because that's the second time now you've said designed properly. So let's start with that. What are they, who can use them, and how is properly, what is properly?
So in a simple form, an employee share plan is a legal structure to allow employees to buy into the business they work for. And that's a really simple concept. It's really popular, particularly in the United States and the UK. They're very popular there. In fact, in the United States, if you sell your business to an ESOP, it's capital gains tax free, as long as it's done properly.
Because the employees have that, it makes sense.
Absolutely, it's a great incentive. Our tax incentives aren't that good here, but there are some tax incentives to bring in employee share plans.
And it crosses over bipartisan, so...
Absolutely. Both sides of politics and some of the minor parties are all in favour of employee share plans because they're a win-win-win, as you said in the introduction. If you do them properly, the employee will be better off at the end of the day, the owner will be better off because they've got an exit strategy, and the business should be better off as well, which is a really important point because what we're seeing now is most of the people that are selling businesses today are baby boomers. They're well off. If they bought a house in Sydney or Melbourne in 1970, when they did, they're already a millionaire. And so they're not necessarily needing to sell the business to fund their retirement. What they say is, I want to make sure my staff are looked after and I want to make sure the business continues after I go.
Well, they've lived probably their whole life in that business.
Absolutely, they love it.
That business has given them their life and nobody wants to see it just die.
Absolutely.
And there's no need for that, and people can still be employed. Because you do care about your employees. They're your other family. You spend more time with them than you do your own family.
At home, that's right.
So of course you would want to make sure that they were safe, secure and had their own investment because the business has hopefully grown because of them with you.
Absolutely. We're in an age now too where employees now are much, much more aware of entrepreneurship. If you go back, when I went to school, and certainly when my dad went to school and uni, no one talked about it.
Was there that word? Did you have the word entrepreneur then?
Probably,
because we used to just call it
not
self-employed.
Really. But it certainly wasn't a popular thing. It wasn't the way to go. We didn't read in the news every day about Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg turning into billionaires because they started this thing. So employees are much more happy to do that. But most of them don't have the personality to do it on their own. They're not risk takers naturally. Some of us are, like you and I perhaps, but typically most employees, no, they're not. But Will they go into business with 10 other people who they've worked with for 10 years in the same business? They know it works well, they know it's profitable? Probably. But there's got to be a structure to allow them to do that, and that's where the ESOP comes in.
So I think the great point that you're making there is that it gives people an opportunity to become entrepreneurs or own their own business without the pain points.
So much safer.
Yeah, less risk for them.
Yep.
They know the job, they know the business. There's no secrets because they're working in it every day. So literally they've been doing their due diligence for years.
For years, that's right.
So that part of it feels fiscally safe.
Yep.
There's some forms of ESOP where they're rewarded with that buy-in to the business, where they don't necessarily have to finance them. Is that right?
Yeah, because one of the problems, particularly in professional services firms, lawyers, accountants, mortgage brokers, real estate agents, those businesses are much larger now than what they were 20 years ago. So the old model, when I was first in an accounting firm back in the late 80s, the old model was the partners would get to 65, 70, or a bit older, some of them, and then they would sell down to the younger guys like me who would buy into the practice and they'd become the partner. And that just went on and on for years. Now, the value of those practices, I need to write a cheque for $1 million.
Yep.
I'm 35, 40 years old. I haven't got the ability to write that cheque. No. I haven't got enough equity in my home. I've probably got a massive mortgage if I'm in Sydney or Melbourne, and I just can't write that cheque. So the ESOP model is to allow people to buy in gradually. And that's got a benefit at both ends. For the people buying in, the funding's much easier, because I might only be buying $20,000, $50,000, $100,000 a year for 10 years rather than one big hit. But for the seller, the person that's exiting, it's actually not financial, it's psychology.
Right.
It's actually saying, you try and talk to a baby boomer, typically white Anglo-Saxon baby boomer male, they're control freaks and they do not want to leave. Some of them.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but some of them.
And when you've got skin in the game and it is your business and you've grown it from zero.
Absolutely, it's your baby.
Yeah, and you remember those times.
Yep.
In fact, some businesses are more loyal than your own family.
Yep.
Right? So it's hard to let go.
Yep.
And you kind of drip feeding the exit, right?
And that's the thing, it can be done over
painless.
5, 7, typically they're 5, 7, 10 years. And so the owner doesn't feel like they're selling, they're just gradually...
But it's their terms.
And it's on
they're
their
going out
terms.
on their terms. And
the good thing is it's predetermined and it's all documented up front. So it's not wishy-washy, maybe it's going to happen or maybe it's not. It's all documented and there's a legal structure, but it's very gradual.
Okay, so let's say that there's a possibility that someone might be interested in setting up an ESOP plan within their business. This is irrelevant of size, right? It doesn't matter whether you're a startup or you've been around for 10 years or 20 years or big or small. Anyone can do this.
We've got quite a few ESOPs with one person in them.
Just so they're getting ready.
Absolutely.
They're preparing for the day when there's more than one.
And the ESOP itself has a succession strategy inside. Because if you start an ESOP today with 2 or 3 people, you can add 2 next year, you can add another 5 the year after. It can automatically grow as the business grows. So in some ways, it's automatically building a succession structure in itself.
Is that getting more popular now with startups?
Startups love it.
Yeah, given that startups have that different way of thinking and they're always searching for talent, and to keep talent embedded in the organisation or to have skin in the game, it's like, maybe we can't pay you the $1 million that you're worth because you're super smart, but guess what, we'll give you a piece of the pie.
Give you equity,
Now work 49 hours a day.
Absolutely.
And
the reality is they haven't got the cash to pay them.
No.
If they raise capital to run the business, they don't want to burn it in salaries quickly, but giving the employee equity also means that employee is much better aligned to the business. They're thinking and acting the same way as the business owner is because they own part of the business. It might only be 5%.
Doesn't matter.
But they think the same way.
They turn up.
Exactly.
They see
much more
everything
committed.
as an advantage, right? It's a different way of looking at it.
Yep.
Okay, you can become certified employee owned. You can get certification on having an ESOP. Why is that important?
It's really interesting academic research out of the United States. They have a massive organisation over there called Certified Employee Owned. It's a cross between, fair trade and the old Australia Made label, which is now coming back everywhere, thank God. It's a similar thing to that, to say this company is actually owned by its employees. Now, the reason that's important is the academic research says that buyers, mum and dad consumers, are happier to buy from an employee-owned company. And not only that, they're happy to spend more. If they buy product A from 2 places, they know that's employee-owned, they're happy to support them. They believe the quality will be better, the delivery is more reliable, the quality's... Exactly.
So that's an interesting perspective because you're looking at an intangible marketing asset of saying not only is our culture like this, not only are we invested in producing the best that we can, but the people in our organisation believe it.
Yep.
And they believe it so much they own a piece of it.
They own part of it, that's right. And you see that in marketing. I mean, we've seen it for a while now in family-owned businesses where they market, there's all those signs that say if you buy something here, you're not contributing to an international company's share price. You're contributing to mum and dad's ability to pay for their daughter's dance lessons or their soccer.
You've saved 5,000 trees
sort of
and this.
Exactly.
So the same way we have green bragging rights, we now have the employee-owned bragging rights.
Yep. And in the United States, it was launched about 3 years ago. It's taken off. It's just gone crazy.
That kind of eliminates the need for some unions.
Well, you don't have the union problem because the employees are also the owners.
Just thinking out loud.
Exactly.
That's right. Who are they going to negotiate with?
Exactly.
Right. So technically, how do they work? It's a legal setup, so you've got to go to an expert.
Yep. Yeah.
And in your line of work, in Succession Plus, do you do all of that?
Yeah, we do all that in-house.
So you manage it all?
Yeah. So the key thing is you've got to have the right legal structure, and there's a whole stack of financial analysis to do to work out, what's the company worth? How much equity do I need to sell over what period? How's that going to be funded? Are the employees going to fund it? Could it come from a profit share? We do a bit of work in some businesses with Macquarie Bank who'll lend money to an employee share plan.
I was going to ask about that for financing.
Yeah.
Depending on how fast you want that to happen,
exactly.
right?
If you need to speed it up, the way to do it is to bring in debt to accelerate. That's the only, I won't say it's a negative, but it is a barrier for some people. If you leave it too late to exit, employee share plan doesn't work because it's a gradual sell down.
Right.
So if you're already 65, you want to exit between now and Christmas, and ESOP's not going to work because it'll take 5 years minimum.
But it's good though that there's the ability of getting finance.
But you can get the funding and accelerate it.
Because imagine if you were, so what's the difference between bringing on a partner to having
There's no difference. So there's no difference.
Because I'm just thinking it through and I'm like...
Yeah, there's no difference, but there is a big difference because the ESOP allows you to document and structure exactly how that's going to work, how they get in, how they get out, what happens to the valuation, what happens if something happens to the business. Now, a lot of that, you can document some of that in a shareholders agreement, but
it's not the same.
It doesn't work the same way.
There's no clear black and white.
So most of our employee share plans have bad leaver clauses. They have clauses around the period that you're there. So if you leave in a short time frame, you lose. The value of your shares are discounted.
Right.
And it's on purpose. It's a penalty.
Well, of course, because someone's relying on you to be part of this plan, and then stuff happens.
Yep.
You might change your mind. Something might happen with the family. You know what? COVID-19 could happen.
Exactly, and the whole thing falls apart.
And it changes everything. Okay, so tell us about the research and the fact that we will be calling you, or we might be calling you, Dr. West.
You can call me Craig. It's fine. So
you're doing a study.
Yeah, so I'm doing some doctoral research around employee share plans, and I've been doing it. This is the 4th year, and there's another probably close to one to go.
I'm very impressed, Craig. I didn't know that you were doing this. Good on you.
It's full on, let me tell you.
I can't imagine it, but...
It's been really interesting because what it does is it just puts some academic rigour around what I've seen in practice. Yep. I talk to business owners every day. I've set up a stack of these employee share plans, and I know they work. But that's one thing. Being able to actually prove it and explain why they work and how they work is an academic exercise that taught me a whole different way to think.
Is that why you're doing it?
Yeah.
Because you felt that there needs to be that credibility built underneath it and saying, not only does it work, it's not just me that says it, here's the data?
Yeah, and I think people tend to, particularly in business, there are so many people out there telling business what to do and how to do it.
Financial advisors.
With no background, no experience, no qualifications, and certainly no academic data or rigour. Whereas I can sit down with people and say, okay, here's how it works and here's why. And when they say, well, how do you know that? I go, read this. Or have a look at this. Or here's a study that showed what the effect is on employees. Rather than just, I think it's a good idea, there's actually some rigour behind it.
So what's your thesis going to cover?
Yeah, the basic parameter is there's a barrier to employee share plans in Australia.
Yep.
And when I first started doing this, I could not understand from a succession planning point of view why far more people didn't do it. That was the original
I can't
question.
either now.
Why do people not do this? I don't get it. And what I'm finding is there's some barriers. And the barriers are, firstly, there's a complete lack of awareness. Most business owners, and unfortunately, a lot of advisors, don't understand it, can't explain it.
I was one of those, and I'm thinking now I should have had my brother on one of these.
There you go.
Instead of as a partner for the last 30 years, I should have had him on
I don't know
ESOP.
if that's going to work with Con, but anyway, maybe. Maybe.
But it sounds, like it's the right kind of thing. Like imagine, often we used to say in our business, we had, 30 or 40 employees, and the key ones, how can we reward them like this?
Yeah.
have them part of the organisation. You've got ideas of expanding and you need more talent to expand. This is the way to do it.
Yeah, it can be, absolutely.
You don't have to go to a bank.
Yep.
They can go to the bank on that value,
Yep.
which is more tangible for a bank
Yep.
to finance it, than
Definitely.
we want to expand.
Well, it takes away one of the biggest risks. From a bank's point of view, in any business, the biggest risk is key people.
Yes.
You're going to be there, Craig, but what about the 4 people that help you run the business? If they leave, we're lending to a shell.
Yeah.
So what we found with the research was the barrier is obviously lack of awareness.
Yep.
There's some tax and legal complexity. Unfortunately, in Australia, we're very good at making things very complicated.
Bureaucrats.
Yeah, our bureaucrats there are some very complicated laws.
So, I'm sorry, the US and the UK is less complicated with
Yes.
their tax laws around this?
Yes, absolutely.
So if we have a different model happening overseas, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. How hard is it going to be to lobby government to fix it?
There's actually 2 inquiries right now
Right.
that I've written submissions to.
Okay.
One's a Senate inquiry on productivity and the other one's a parliamentary inquiry on taxation for employee share plans. And so they've got a lot of there's a lot of submissions, not
So
just from
they
me.
understand that this is something
They've
that they've got to
understood
address.
that there's a problem, which is the first step in
Yep.
getting it right.
Yep.
They changed the laws back in 2015 and now they're reviewing them to make sure they can tweak them. And there's only a few things they need to change to make it a lot simpler. So that's happening now. And then it's really just around a perception from most business owners that when you hear the word employee share plan, that's for Westpac or Macquarie or BHP. It's for a big listed company. It's not for my small family business with 10 staff.
But we
it's
said
not
up
true.
front,
It's a perception that's just wrong. So
Because
it's about education and awareness.
startups and again, and I'm thinking of businesses, Craig, where you take on employees who learn on the job with you.
Yep.
Right? Often even an apprentice type of environment,
Absolutely.
right?
Yep.
And I know of some people that I've come across who said, yeah, I've been with the organisation 20 years, I started my apprenticeship here, I stayed here. And you're thinking, well, if you've invested 20 years into that company, what are you going to have to show for it? Just long service leave.
Yeah. Yep.
You'll get paid 3 months off or 6 months
Whatever
off or
you
something
get.
like
Yeah,
that.
that's right.
But you could walk away with nothing.
Yep.
You
and
can
often
lose your job.
Most people do.
Yeah.
Most
and
people
just
do.
have one date entry on your resume.
Yep.
But, and some of your star key people come through the organisation with you. It's been all about how you've interacted with them as opposed to their skill from the beginning. That's why they've stayed.
Yep.
And they've learnt on the job. They've given back. They're ideal to be part of this.
Absolutely.
People that came in
you
with
want
no
those
quals.
people with you forever.
And this is a perfect way of rewarding them. No wonder it's perfect for SMEs.
Yeah, it's going really strongly at the moment. People are starting to get an awareness that they should look at this as an option.
So the tax and legal benefits, we've touched a little bit on the legal.
Yep.
It's an agreement.
Yep.
And the exits and the reasons for the exits, that's all covered. So that's easy to understand. What are the tax barriers, if you can, without too much complication?
Yeah, not so much. I mean, there are some tax benefits.
Right.
So the tax concessions that were brought in 2015 allow employees to defer the tax on anything they get through an employee share plan for up to 15 years. That's a long time.
That's great.
So you get $10,000 worth of shares today, and as long as it's all documented properly, you can defer the tax on that $10,000 for 15 years.
Is that on the gain?
No, that's on the income that you get through the employee share plan.
Right, because you get a trust distribution.
Yeah, the company makes a contribution to the plan for you to buy shares.
Yep.
That would normally be income because they're giving you the
right.
money to buy the
You're
shares.
earning something.
But you can defer that for up to 15 years if it's set up properly. So that benefit is huge. And if people, if you just think about what that means.
You can make your money work for you.
Exactly, because that money that's going, let's say it's $10,000 that you would have paid tax on. A, you keep the whole $10,000 because you haven't got to get tax on it. B, it's going into an appreciating asset, hopefully. Most businesses are increasing in value, most. If it is, then not only are you earning that income tax-free, but you're earning the capital gain. Now, you pay tax on it later, but it's a pretty big window.
But 15 years, up to 15 years, you're talking about you can make that money work harder for you again.
Absolutely.
You can take it and invest it somewhere else.
Correct.
Or buy more shares.
Or buy more shares, which is what a lot of people do.
Because that's what you could do.
They just keep buying shares in the company.
If you know, and then in 15 years you know ahead where you're going.
Yep.
I think I'm very impressed. Well, look, I look forward to calling you doctor. I do. I'm going to have to change your contacts in my phone.
Yeah, righto.
You might have to change your Twitter handle. You need to think
I don't know
about
that. Yeah, I haven't thought about that. That's a good point.
Thank you very much for joining us today and telling us all about ESOP.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
To all our viewers and watchers out there, thank you very much for subscribing to SME TV. And if you haven't, you need to. A big shout out to the SME Association for their support of SME TV. A bigger shout out to the Piedmont Studio for their great production. If you have any comments, questions, Let me see, stories, you can send them straight to me. news@smea.org.au. And of course, we're across all the socials. Thank you. Thank you, Craig.
Thanks, Angela.